the She Breathes Soul Stories podcast, and I am your host, Jen Gulbrand. And as our listeners know, I geek out on this idea that there is such a profound impact that we can have when we share our personal narratives. When we share our stories, they have this power to create waves of change and understanding between us. Every woman's truth is like a thread in this tapestry of the human experience. And we are here today to wholeheartedly support everyone out there in sharing their stories. So today I am super excited to be in our virtual studio with Carey Gatto of Goddess Uprising. Carey is a life coach and a priestess. So I'm going to welcome you, Carey, to tell us what that means.
Hi, Jen. Thank you so
Hi.
much for having me. And
Yeah.
hello, everybody who's listening. Um, yes, I know that is a good question to answer right up front. So, priestess, it's basically an archetype that has kind of fallen out of our common language, but it dates all the way back to ancient times. And, back before patriarchy was the way of the world, priestesses were sacred and revered spiritual leaders in their communities, and
Mm,
they were often advisors to, royalty and to common people whenever there were issues at hand or they just were looking for, some wisdom and um, even times of initiation in their lives and rites of passage. Priestesses would hold space for the more spiritual, ethereal parts of human experience and had a connection to nature, connection to the divine. And again, that's sort of fallen out of our vernacular and out of our society, which is a shame. And I want to bring it
yeah,
back
I
because
love it.
I feel that women do really have a connection to the spiritual side of life just through the fact that, they're naturally intuitive. They are the bearers of life in our species, right? So they have that portal to, universal energy, universal life and consciousness. And as a priestess, what it really means to me is that I help women to remember their own inherent divinity. Like that's the bottom line. That's what I help women do.
I absolutely love it. I always say I'm a dropout, corporate dropout gone goddess. And in my first book, I write a lot about this whole goddess divine feminine energy. And it is so, um, we're so naturally inclined to have that kind of energy as women. I mean, everybody has both, right? Masculine and
Yeah.
feminine energies. But as
Yeah.
women, I think we're kind of socialized to sort of reject the feminine, the softness, the allowing and the fluidity, and because we're all about, getting stuff done. And we and sadly, I feel like so many of us fall into our masculine doing energy, and we forget to sort of balance that with the allowing and the embracing and the
Mm,
softness of who we're really designed to be. But it's like this conflict, don't you think, that so many of us as
absolutely.
women struggle with? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of us get caught up in the paradigm of just doing, 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 the hustle culture, right?
Yeah.
And it's a very forward-focused mentality where
Yeah.
there's always some goal to achieve. There's always
Right.
some result, some outcome that we're kind of focused on.
Yeah.
And when we're, over identified with that way of thinking and over functioning, it can be to the detriment of just being present with ourselves and,
Exactly.
just being in the moment.
Being in
Um,
the flow, allowing things to just unfold. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
found when I can do that, that's when the magic happens, you know?
Oh,
When we can just like
absolutely.
let go of all the, things that we perceive as control. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the like biggest things about feminine energy and reconnecting to it is just
Yeah.
learning to slow down and breathe and
Yeah,
and stop and yeah, just be here now. And that's one of
so
the
true.
best ways to really kind of get back to it, get back and reconnect to your feminine energy is, just to reconnect to the present moment.
It's so important. And we need both, right? We don't want to lean into one side versus the other.
Yeah.
We really want to try to find that balance so that things can
Yeah.
flow in as they're intended. Well, this is so exciting. As a fellow priestess, I'm so happy to have you on the show. So let's have you share, Carey, kind of your story. The story, this podcast is all about us sort of coming out from hiding and sharing, parts of ourselves, aspects of our lives that have really been significant. So, what story would you like to share with our listeners today?
Wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's hard to choose.
Yeah.
What's coming up for me right now is actually going all the way back to my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I have sort of a different story because I was born in the UK. I was born in Northern Ireland. My mom's whole family is from there. And my dad's American. And then we moved to the US when I was around 1 years old. And so I spent my early childhood there until I was 9. And and I guess just I feel like I want to share that because again, my parents, it was untraditional because my parents they were into like transcendental meditation and sort of like new age spirituality when I was younger. And when you're a kid, you just figure everyone's like you, right? So I didn't
Right?
know it was different at the time, but I started to, meet and talk to different little friends about things like, they would bring up Jesus or Christmas and things like that. And I'd be like,
What?
that's not true. And I remember we got a call. My parents got a call from one little girl's parents saying, my daughter's very upset because your daughter told her that Jesus is not real. And
Uh-oh. And so it began.
yes, and I that kind of scarred me because I was like, well, I wasn't
Yeah.
trying to hurt anybody, right? I wasn't trying to upset anyone. I was just,
It's what you knew. It's what
it was
it
like
was
this
your
clash, yeah, of like,
yeah.
oh, so different people can believe different things. That's weird.
So neat. Yeah.
And so I remember I talked to a very talented healer about a year ago, Robin Thomas. I don't know if
Oh,
you know
she's
her.
wonderful. I love Robin.
Yeah. And we looked at that experience because I think that one childhood experience probably held me back a lot from speaking my truth
I was just gonna
and
say, because of the
not
response
wanting
you
to
got.
disrupt, yeah, not wanting to disrupt the status quo or rock the boat because I felt like it could be hurtful or dangerous.
Yeah.
Right. And so even though I'd always been so interested in different religions and worldviews and cultures and spirituality, and I was exposed to a lot of different kinds of spirituality and cultures as a kid, I always felt like I sort of had to like keep it close
Hide
to
it.
myself and hide it. And so it took me a long time to really get comfortable, speaking about my deeper innermost thoughts and
Yeah.
philosophies and and how I always had this sort of connection to something beyond the physical,
Mm.
right?
That's so fascinating. And it is a very different twist, I think, than so many of us who identify as healers or light workers, because I think for many of us, we didn't necessarily start in an environment or a home where it was fostered. Like in my case, I would
Hmm.
be, talking to my grandfather who had just passed away, and my parents would be like, yeah, okay, honey. Right? Like it wasn't fostered because they didn't understand. So it's an interesting dynamic that you started there. And instead of having to sort of find it and accept it as you became comfortable with it, you already were comfortable and then had it kind of squelched, right? By
Yeah.
by this by this person's response at a
Yeah,
very
so
young
that
age.
that young experience definitely, like being exposed to meditation and yoga and like all these things
Yeah.
that were not mainstream at the time at all. And but it made me feel very different than other
Hmm.
people, right?
Right.
So yeah, it had this, it made me more open-minded, but it also had the effect of like, sort of
Yeah.
hiding
Sure.
my gifts and my truth. But also, these stories have like so many different layers and threads.
Yeah.
So there was a later on when I was maybe 8 or 9, the spiritual group that my parents were a part of kind of fell apart, and it was exposed that the guru, shall we say, was,
Hmm.
corrupt, and he
Sure.
was really abusing his power that he had, as tends to happen, unfortunately, in
Yeah.
those kind of things. But that was interesting too because the backlash of that experience and the crisis that it meant for my parents going through that. And what it gave me was this resistance to, any kind of person toting themselves as a guru.
Right. Yeah. It tainted it for you, really. Wow.
Yeah, which really led me back to where, I when I came into my own awakening, it was through a certain modality, an energy healing modality that really promoted the idea that we are our own guru, right? We
Hmm.
are our own healer.
Yeah.
We are
Absolutely.
sovereign beings. And that resonated with me so deeply because I
Right.
was like, exactly. No one's ever really told it to me like that before, but
Right.
that's how I feel.
It was less about the external and more about it's the inside job. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which,
And having that personal connection to the divine
yeah,
rather than having to go through somebody else.
exactly. Wow, that's so cool. And when did that occur for you? At what point in your life?
I was coming up, I'm like 40 years old, and it was around the time I had my third child. So it was around 2018. And then you know, I stumbled across it, right? It was a happy accident, right? A synchronicity. And I'd never experienced like any energy healing prior to that, but as soon as I heard about it, I was like, I have to try that. And so I did. And it just like set me on a path. I became, just aware of energy like I never had been before in a very
Your
tangible way.
your soul remembered though, from
Yes,
whatever other experiences you had, right? It remembered and it resonated for you, and you're like, oh, this is what I'm here for. Yeah. It's
exactly.
amazing, isn't it? It's an amazing experience.
It really
Yeah.
is. It was so profound. And so I basically 6 months or so later, I went to become a certified energy healer
Mm,
because I wanted mostly just to learn more for my own evolution, you know.
yes.
Um, and yeah, it's been life-changing. So,
And it's interesting once you do that, like that level one, and you realize how beneficial it is for yourself, it's kind of hard not to keep going and share it with others
yeah,
because it's not really up to you. It's
right.
just by design, right? How it kind of unfolds from there. And oh, I'm so excited for you. That's a beautiful story. And now
Thank
you're
you.
now you're using all those gifts to help other people, women in particular. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
I do life coaching and particularly with women, and I typically will offer energy healing as an add-on
Yeah.
service
Yeah.
because it can facilitate and accelerate
So much.
the healing process and the
Yeah.
the, the individual's spiritual growth and evolution. So
It's so interesting. I used to segment them as a coach and an energy healer as well, and now I just tell people it's we're so multidimensional. I'll have them in the chair, sitting and coaching with them, and then 5 minutes later we're in the healing room because it's all very integrated, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
and also it's not all in our, we're so conditioned to think it's all in our beautiful brains, and our brains can,
right.
fix everything, but it's so much of it's in our physical and energetic bodies that it needs to be an integrated process. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's so interesting to see how that's evolved for me too in my own practice. Because I
Yeah.
think the deeper you get into it, the more you understand how interconnected it all is. It's all so
Yeah,
woven
it all
together.
weaves together because
Yeah,
everything
for
is
sure.
energy.
Right.
Oh,
It
it
sure
does.
is. It
I
sure is.
actually, it's funny because I love that word integrated. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's like my word for this year
Oh,
because
I love that.
yeah, it's so funny that you're using it now because
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that. So I was in real estate for 12 years prior to going into coaching and healing.
Yeah.
And and that was obviously a very, much more kind of practical,
Sure.
concrete sort of business. Although,
You're still holding space for people, just a different way.
yes,
Yeah.
it's totally. It's
Yeah.
still about people, it's still about
Yeah.
connection. And it was, for me, I was an entrepreneur and having a lot of personal growth along with that. Um, but um, But to say, like, I've recently, just in the past year, gotten licensed as a financial consultant.
Oh, yeah.
And it's interesting because I'm like, it does seem like it's so different, right? Like working with people with their finances and then working with
Yeah.
like their spirituality. But
Money is
I'm
energy.
learning, yes, that integration is there. Like
Yeah.
it's all kind of the same thing when you
That's
really
right.
when you really allow it to, you allow yourself to see it that way. Like this morning, I
Absolutely.
literally did an energy healing and then did a financial consult.
Yeah. I think that's
And it,
great.
yeah,
I think it's great. It is. We are all, we aren't one thing as humans. We're so multidimensional. We have so many aspects to us.
yeah.
And, you can't really pick one slice of the pie out and just, work on that. You kind of have to look at our whole being, in
Yeah,
terms
and
of
like
trying to find a place of well-being. And there's so many of those aspects: our personal lives, our relationships, our financial, our career, our health, right? Our mental health. Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
I think that I've been really thinking about how financial health is part of
Hmm.
our overall health.
It
It
is.
affects us emotionally, physically, mentally, right? And so I
Yeah.
think it's just really about, again, integration, balance.
Yeah.
If you want to look at it from the perspective of masculine and feminine energy,
Hmm.
right? We want balance. We're all made up of both, and they can be mutually supportive, which is really the
Absolutely.
goal.
Absolutely. um, and actually the whole idea around like mindset. So we, just like we were talking about our childhood and some of the belief systems that because of things that happen to us, how our belief systems might be formed. It's the same with
Mhm.
money. We all have a money mindset story, most of which was formed in how it was in our childhood, in our home, and how it was
Exactly.
perceived and treated. And that can take some unraveling too as adults, right? To figure out, what is your money story? Do you feel good when you hear the word wealth, or do you feel cringy?
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, 100%. Like
Right.
most of us have heard things like money is the root of all evil,
Right.
right? So we've
Yep.
kind of been shamed and gaslit to
Hmm.
think that if we are wealthy, we're bad, and if we're
Yeah.
poor, we're good, which
Yeah.
is absurd,
It
really,
is
because
absurd. Yeah. Yeah.
the
It
more
is.
the more abundant we are, the more we're able to do positive things.
Things and
World.
helping other people. Absolutely. Oh,
So
it's so great. I love that you're combining or integrating the wealth mindset with energy and healing. I think that's great in coaching, right?
thank you.
Yeah, I
It
love
feels
it.
good.
I love your
Yeah.
story. Your story is so empowering. So, have you often shared that story about your childhood and that experience that you had, or is this sort of a new place
This
for
is
you?
pretty new. I don't think
Yeah,
I've ever shared it publicly.
yeah. And how do you feel?
Good.
Yeah, yeah.
Feels good. Yeah, maybe a little bit of a vulnerability hangover, but that's
Right.
okay.
Well, and that's the thing, right? We're not used to being vulnerable and real and shining a
Right.
light on some of that stuff. But what an interesting story it is to, for people to think about and to witness, and where it led you into the work that you do today, right? You kind
Yeah.
of went full circle. you know,
Yeah.
a
It's always
place that was,
interesting.
go ahead.
Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead. No, it's just it's always interesting to like think back at those childhood experiences because as
Hmm.
long as they're, you know, only like we only look at them within us and we don't share them, they seem so like, I don't know,
Poignant.
poignant. Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's just the way it is almost, but then when you
Yeah.
put them out there and
Yeah.
share them, it's like, oh, that's so
Yeah.
cute.
Well,
You
and
know?
also, it don't you think, like, I'd love to know how you feel right now. Like, it's also a way to kind of reclaim power over the narrative because for so long, our limiting beliefs kind of they have power over us, whether we know it or
Yeah.
not. Our subconscious is in the driver's seat. But when you state and share publicly a story like that, you kind of reclaim your power over it, don't you think?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it releases its hold on you. And
Right.
you're just like, it's
Yeah.
just a story. And,
Yeah.
somebody else can witnessing it kind of gives you the, okay, now it's out there. It's like,
Yeah.
it can't hurt me. It's just words. It's
It
just something
liberates you.
happened.
Well,
Yeah.
and the
It
other thing
liberates.
is, we think everything that happens to us, it sort of defines us, which is so far from the truth. It informs us, it shapes who we are and the decisions we make and our choices, but it doesn't like you're not sort of we feel like we're stuck in that label, you know?
Mm,
And when in reality it's liberating yourself from that is a big part of the whole healing process, you know?
yeah.
That's just something I experienced. It doesn't define me for ever. It's just
Yeah.
something I experienced, and now I can release it, understand it, evolve with it. Yeah,
Well, when we're kids, we're so tender, right? And we're
yeah,
so malleable that like
right.
these things that happen, they shape our worldview. And
So much
so,
so.
we go about our lives just having that worldview. But
Yeah,
then when we kind of release ourselves from those stories, we realize we're so much bigger than that. We're so much
so
bigger than
true.
any perspective or experience. Like we have this bigger consciousness that kind of transcends the
Hmm.
circumstances of our lives,
Absolutely.
you know?
It's so true. And I'm thinking back to your reaction as that young girl who was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't mean to hurt this friend by telling her that." Um, and I think so many of us also tend to be kind of because we're empathic and we feel everybody's everything, then
Yeah.
we kind of get uber cautious about how we are impacting other people, how our behaviors, our words, and we kind of get into that people pleasing mode too, which isn't always so good. But like, I
Oh,
don't want
yeah.
to be responsible for somebody else's pain, right? So
Hmm.
I'll just stay quiet. I'll go inward, and I won't rock, like you said, I won't rock the boat, or you know,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
and
I,
so that right? Did you
yeah,
have you
I
experienced
definitely,
any of that in your sort of
oh,
going through these? Yeah,
100%. Like
right?
most of my life, I took responsibility for other people's emotions,
Right? Oh,
It's
I
so
know.
silly to say, but I wasn't aware I was doing it, right? I was just
Same.
catering
Mm,
to what I thought other people were feeling or what they wanted or what they needed.
right.
Meanwhile, putting my own emotions and my own
Right.
needs and wants on the back burner because
Exactly.
good
Which we
girl
do.
programming, what have you, or just, empathic patterns that I
Yeah.
couldn't be happy or settled if somebody else was upset near me. So
Right.
I would like fix it. I would try to fix it. And
Oh,
of course,
yes. I know.
you
The
can't.
rescuer. I became the
Yeah.
rescuer that nobody really wanted to be rescued, but I felt like it was my
Right.
job, right?
Right.
I know it's
Yeah.
so interesting. And also because we're so focused on the external validation and the responses from outside versus when we learn to go inside and have it come from
Yeah.
inside out, it's a completely different experience, right? It takes a while though
Absolutely.
to get there.
Yeah, and I think what I've learned too is that it's actually kinder not to
Yes,
try to do that, right? Not to
exactly.
overextend and take responsibility for other people's actions or
Exactly.
feelings
Yeah,
because it's up to them, just as my
exactly.
feelings are up to me, and
Mm,
we all sort of, you know, ultimately need to have that responsibility for our own lives
it's
and
so
be that
true.
those sovereign beings in the
Yeah,
world,
yeah.
because we can't rely on somebody else for our happiness. It just doesn't work.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And it's I wish it. I wish we could learn that earlier in our lives, I
Right.
know I'm constantly taking all of my life lessons and sharing them with my young adult daughter, like this isn't yours. This don't carry that. That was my stuff that was passed down to me from generations, and I'm like it's up to you to break those patterns, right? So we have
Yes,
those discussions all the time.
that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, I think it's really important that we take our learnings and we pass them down so that we don't
Yeah.
repeat those patterns of suffering. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, because
I could talk to you all day.
I know, seriously.
There's a reason that we were connected, I'm sure, because our work is very aligned, and I'm really happy to have you on the show today. What would you say to other people who might be listening who are like, oh, I've been holding this story inside for so long, and I wonder if what it would feel like for me to share it publicly. It doesn't have to be in a podcast or in a book. It can just be talking to someone you trust. But what do you say about that?
Right.
Would you encourage them?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've been there. I remember, when I
Yeah.
first started sort of transitioning from, you know, being a real estate agent, right, to being more of a like public coach and content creator. And it felt so scary to talk about
Right.
my experiences, like my innermost experiences and my life and what was really happening, what was really coming up for me, my childhood and stuff like that. I mean, it felt almost impossible, but Eve, like the thing is, we concentrate so much, like we focus so much on these things, but to other people, it's
Right.
not
Right.
like they don't,
Right.
honestly, not to sound harsh, but they don't care, right? Like,
Yeah.
not that they don't care, but they don't, it's not their focus.
They're
You know
not
what I mean?
judging you because of the things that you've gone through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're
If
hyper
anything.
focused on it
Mm.
because it's us,
Yeah.
right? So I think
Yeah.
even just like taking baby steps,
Right.
like writing it in a journal
That's
or
always a good place to start. Absolutely.
maybe doing a blog. That's what I
Yeah.
did. I started
Yeah.
with a blog
Yeah.
or, being on a podcast or, you
Sure.
just sharing little drips and drops or
Yes.
doing a post on
Yeah.
social media or whatever. Like maybe it's talking to a friend or to a family member about
Or a
something.
therapist or a coach.
Or
Yeah.
yes.
Someone you trust. Yeah.
And it does create so much relief in your own energetic body and
Absolutely.
also connection and a sense of empowerment and like so much good things can come from that. As well
Thank
as
you for saying that. Oh, I
yeah.
was just going to say, like, what is the word that comes to mind when you think about that release for yourself? Like, you just basically said it, that liberation, that empowerment, that sort of self, um, actualization, right? Like you feel like you
Yeah.
can do anything because you've released the weights, you know, that were
Yeah.
kind of holding you back. Yeah. Oh, it's so great. I'm so happy that you came on today and shared that part of your story. How can people get in touch with you, Carey? Because I'm sure they were going to want to learn more about the work that you're doing and how they can potentially connect with you.
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
can drop me an email at Carey at goddess-uprising.com.
Wonderful.
And yeah, that's probably the easiest way, or you can find me on Instagram and it's goddess underscore uprising underscore.
I love it. And I'm assuming you see clients both in person and virtually with the
I do.
work that you do. Yeah.
Yeah, mostly
Awesome.
virtually, to be honest,
Okay.
but yes,
Yeah.
either
Okay,
one.
good.
Yeah,
Well, I thank you so much for joining us today. For it's been such a beautiful and inspiring conversation. And again, I feel like this is just the beginning for you and I can think of all kinds of ways we can collaborate. So thank you, and
Ooh.
thank you to our listeners for helping us breathe life into stories like Carrie's. And if you'd like to hear more of our stories, the complete She Breathes Soul Stories collection is the book itself is available on Amazon, and of course, the podcast is available. And if you are interested, if you have a story to tell and you'd like to be a part of this, just send me an email at jennengulbrand.com. That's Jen at jengulbrand.com. And we look forward to hearing from you. when you're ready to share your stories. So thank you so much, everybody. And that's a
Thank
wrap for
you.
today. Yeah, thanks, Carrie. I look forward to doing some collaborating together.
I
And
can't
and
wait.
I know it's
Yeah.
going to be fun. So thank you, everybody, for listening. That's a wrap for today. With love. Have a beautiful day, Jen.